The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
A family business venture turned family tragedy has the state of New Jersey proven their case against Paul Caneiro. And in Florida, a standout former football player says he was standing his ground. Why DNA might be critical to the attempted murder case against him. And in California, a team takes on social media titans in what could be a landmark case accusing the companies of causing youth addiction. The court of law is done for the day. Let's call to order Court of Opinion. Welcome to Court of Opinion. I'm Julia Jenaé, your moderator for this hour. Thank you for joining us. We begin in New Jersey for a case involving an alleged fatal family scheme. Now, prosecutors say a man killed his own brother and then tried to burn the evidence. The defendant here is Paul Caneiro. He's accused of killing his brother and business partner Keith Caneiro, and then went on to kill Keith's wife and 2 young kids. That's all part of the allegations against him. And the prosecution goes on to say that after these horrific killings, Paul set Keith's home on fire and then drove back to his own house and torched it too, all in an alleged attempt to confuse investigators and make everything appear to have been a targeted attack against the whole family tree. Now, the state says the motive was money, that Keith had just discovered that his brother was stealing from their business and Keith was preparing to expose him. It was day 9 of testimony today, so in case you missed it, let's get you caught up. Here are today's highlights.
On my arrival, there were several law enforcement fire personnel present. It was a large property, so that was expected. Fire was actively engulfing the actual property itself, the structure. Fire personnel were still conducting suppression activities, so I've remained obviously on the exterior portion of the structure, not going inside, and just making overall assessments and observations of the actual structure. This is the front of 15 Willowbrook. This is more so the back of the house, kind of like the southwest corner. This is the back side of the house, again, now going towards the other side. This is the front of the house again, but more leaning towards the east side.
Did you learn any specific information upon arrival about any individuals that could be present or the like?
I was made aware that there was a deceased male outside of the residence along the northwest corner of the structure, in addition to additional deceased individuals inside of the structure.
So you receive information that there are structural integrity issues to the house, correct?
Yeah, potentially, yes.
Potentially. So based upon that and based upon the discussions with respect to the bodies and that being evidence, what, if anything, did you and the members of your unit decide to do?
We removed the bodies.
You mentioned that you ultimately entered the house.
Yes.
Okay. Now, as far as the conditions go, what were they like upon your entry?
It was still an active fire.
Do you recall, generally at least, where the victims were located when you entered the home?
Yes, I believe fire personnel removed one victim, and then there was another victim inside the front door as you approach the, I guess, the foyer area. You're walking in, so to the left, and then there was another victim in the kitchen area to the right as you proceeded inside.
Sir, what are we looking at there?
So as I mentioned, members of the investigative team eventually cleaned out the closet and removed the debris to look at or for potential patterns on the floors and on the lower portions of the walls within that storage closet. This fire originated in that storage closet based on what we observed, and then once breached whatever structural areas within that closet, it was introduced to more oxygen. Oxygen fuels fire. Fire then grew and then spread and had full engulfment and full involvement of the entire structure.
Okay. Was there any indication that this fire could have resulted from natural causes?
Yeah. We actually looked for things of that may cause accidents, such as candles, cigarettes, things like that, and nothing appeared in that area of origin that would have indicated that.
What are we looking at here?
This is that base of that same island area where you can see visible red-brown staining at the base there, and on the actual door area, and also on the hinge side as well.
Where are we looking now?
This is the opposite side now. We're on the other side of the island. And this general location is where we located one of the victims. And it was right at this location where you see that red-brown staining that this victim was discovered.
Is that consistent with where you made observations on November 20th, 2018 of one of the victims?
Yes.
Now, again, blood going from left to right. Did you come up with, or did you draw any conclusions with respect to the blood that was located therein?
My analysis revealed that at minimum, one mobile blood source entered and exited that kitchen, or had that movement possibly entering and exiting that kitchen, or consistent with entering and exiting that kitchen, I should say.
All right, that's the wrap of day 9. Let's get right to our power panel, see what they think about the evidence against Paul Caneiro. We have with us attorney and former litigator Lisa Bonner, criminal defense attorney Josh Schiffer, and former homicides prosecutor and author Jarrett Ferrantino. So good to have you all on Court of Opinion. And Lisa, I'm going to start with you. You've weighed in on this case before. Has your opinion changed at all of this case now that we are 9 days into it as far as Paul Caneiro's chances?
No, not at all. This is a fellow that seems to think he is smarter than everybody else, right? And the evidence is there. I know we're going to talk about that later, but it just is, to me, it's clear that, you know, the likelihood of somebody setting fire to one brother's house, the other brother's house. We have a serial arsonist. Is that what we're looking at? No. The evidence, everything leads to him. So I am doubling down. I am not retreating. I expect this man to go down like the Titanic, and I am standing by it. And if anything, it has reinforced my belief that he is guilty.
Criminal defense attorney Josh Schiffer, make the argument for the defense. What will be his best defense?
Oh, you're going to make me argue the hard side. You see, here I am about to agree with my wonderful colleague here. It's like bad television, but that's why, if I'm speaking for the defense, that you've got to consider what could happen. Because we're talking about New Jersey. We're talking about New York. If there's a place where weird things happen, inexplicable things, this would kind of be where those stories come from. The big city. I don't know how easy a sale that is, though, because this is literally out of a trashed script from the floor at a third-rate television network. That's the kind of story this is telling. It's unoriginal. It's, hey, I got money problems, so I'm going to try to take down my family and commit indefensibly horrible crimes against these innocent children and his ex-sister, or his sister-in-law.
Yeah, entire family. I mean,
beyond brutal.
The plot, it's something that you can't make up in terms of the details. But Jarrett Ferrantino, I liked how you described it as something that is a plot almost dating back to biblical times.
Well, it's Julia, it's Cain and Abel. This is a brother who was clearly consumed with jealousy and greed. And what gets lost, you know, tonight we're talking about the fire. You have little children, his own niece and nephew, that were brutally stabbed. So he burned the house, killed everyone inside, had lured his brother outside, but only a little fire started in his house. I mean, as they prove the arson, they prove that his story is falling apart too. Who targets somebody, lights a small fire, targets another brother, killing everyone inside, and burning the house down? It just doesn't make any sense unless you're Paul Caneiro committing this.
And this is the brother that's the loser of the three of them. And well, it's just like...
Now, you mentioned that there are 3. Do you think there's going to be any bus throwing in terms of the defense?
100%.
For sure. Absolutely. Wasn't me. That's always, it's somebody else. You know, he even sent a letter to Keith sent a letter to the younger brother, basically an email saying that money is missing. I think Paul did it. So clearly there was some suspicion, and it always wasn't me. It wasn't me. And who else is he going to blame?
Now, you mentioned the suspicion. Let's play a clip, because Keith was suspicious, and he recorded one of the last conversations that he had with his brother. Take a listen.
Paul, just give me the login so I can see where the money went. Take it on your computer and tell me where the money went. Paul, somebody else could read it to you there. I need to know where that money went. Run the real wild, Paul. I understand you're saying you need to wake the up, Paul.
Josh, he was suspicious and he was doubling down on Paul needing to come clean with everything.
Absolutely. And you see the family dynamic and the family pressure just adds more and more to the guilt equation. It kind of reminds me of the Markel case where you've got these family members that all know something's up. You can't get away from that. And then when you see the brutal massacre of this family, it's hard to come up with any pathway where Mr. Caneiro's not going to be accountable.
Yeah, Lisa, you almost wonder, what did he think would happen after everything burned up? Would this all go away? His money problems go away? I mean, criminal investigations turn everything upside down.
That's the thing, that the hubris of it all, right? That the fact that you think that you are smarter than everybody else, all the forensic experts, all the police, all the investigators that are coming in there, I don't think that people that do these things really think it out. And they are really thoughtful about the fact that this is what these people do for a living, and that you are likely going to be caught. But that's where it all turns. People think that they're smarter than everybody else, and I can get away with things that nobody else has gotten away with. Come on, like, it's insane.
Jared, you've got a book that's coming out, Mothers, Murders, and Motivation. So I want to talk about motive in this case. He's not facing the death penalty, but in death penalty states like Florida, pecuniary gain, financial gain, that's enough to get you the needle in terms of a murder that has that kind of aggravator. What do you think the average juror and just society, how do they feel about a killing where money is valued over life?
Well, Julia, that's an aggravator. Multiple victims is an aggravator here. The commission of other felonies is an aggravator. So if anybody was asking for the death penalty, this guy hit a grand slam on aggravators. But I know when you choose money over life, jurors don't understand it, they don't like it, and they will consequence a defendant like Paul Caneiro for it.
Josh, you think there's a chance that the defense is just going to rest, no evidence? We see that a lot, and there's a lot of evidence against him.
It would be if they built the right case for a burden argument at close where, hey, this is the state's version, but there's so much more you didn't hear about, rush to judgment. But a lot of those standard arguments don't exist here. Look at how long this case has been out there. There's not new evidence. There's not new stories. There was no mystery guest coming in to provide an alternative theory. They don't have a lot to rely on. If I'm representing Mr. Caneiro, I actually talk about this may be where you want to get up, throw out whatever you got in that gut in front of that jury and start praying. Because like Lisa said, he's so disconnected from reality, just thinking that he could commit this crime and get away with it. This wasn't a last-minute crime. There's some premeditation involved. Like Jet's saying, this is a death penalty case in a lot of states, especially people underestimate arson and why we take it so seriously. Arson's not just the damage to property. Few things kill as many people as fire, especially first responders.
And we're going to talk about the damage caused by arson. Let's get to our break. Coming up, our power panel is coming with us, and we're keeping the conversation going there in New Jersey in the case against Paul Caneiro. Jurors saw a lot of physical evidence today detailing not only the carnage, but the arson that happened in the early morning hours of November 20th, 2018. Stay with us. We're breaking it all down.
The Court TV podcast will return.
Welcome back. We are continuing to talk about this case out of New Jersey that is so shocking, the Mansion murders trial for Paul Caneiro. And today was an evidence-heavy day for these jurors. They looked at things and listened to things, all involving the aftermath of these brutal killings and how the fire may have been started that day. So let's dive into that evidence, take a closer look at it. First up, here's a look at what our team chose as the most compelling of the day. And this is the images of Keith Caneiro's burned out home home following the fire. And these photos show just how extensive the damage was. Detective Joseph Cordoma, he testified about how the basement storage closet was the area with the most damage, and it's the area where the fire was believed to have been started. So we just want to take some time to look at these images. And it shows you just how long this fire likely broiled inside of that home. The damage that it caused, where it's almost unrecognizable of what these rooms likely were beforehand, what items were in the room. You see that television there on the screen, completely charred out. As we watch this evidence, let's bring back in our guest panel, Lisa Bonner, Josh Schiffer, and Jarrett Ferrantino, our legal experts. And Josh, I'm going to start with you because you talked about this before we went to the break. What kind of impact does fire evidence have on a juror?
It absolutely concretizes the damages issue. Anybody that's been exposed to fire and traumatic loss like that understands how big the issue is, how it literally is so destructive. Nothing escapes fire. It's why the sentences are so severe for arson and other damage-related issues. It's not just that property damage, it's the risk to people that have to come and attend to that fire, and first responders, let alone, and on top of the fact that this fire was hiding 3 other bodies, then the brother, and one of those bodies was a little girl who actually died of asphyxiation. Not the injuries. And that meant she survived the brutal attack to die in a fire. And there are few more painful injuries than a burn. Burns are absolutely mind-blowingly painful. And it just boggles the mind, the cruelty. But let's talk about how good this evidence is. This evidence is honest. It is easily interpreted by experts. The detective did a wonderful job walking people through how a fire starts, where this fire existed, how this fire came about, and he was very clear with his conclusions that absolutely point the finger at Paul Caneiro.
Jarrett, what's your opinion of this evidence? Is it supporting the state's case here? Is it neutral? Is it not really moving the needle on guilt for Paul Caneiro, or does it undermine their case in any way?
It's profound. It moves the needle for the state. And Julia, you're always looking for that evidence to coincide with the story you're telling the jury. This is the ruins of Keith Caneiro and his family's life. When you can show that it was brought about by Paul Caneiro and he torched that mansion, and it is literally in ruins along with their bodies, and it fits right in to the story of jealousy and greed, it is going to have a sledgehammer impact on that jury.
Lisa, I want you to react to another piece of evidence that goes along with this, because the detective on the stand, who was the first witness today, he testified about the origin and cause of that fire. Take a listen.
We determined as a team that that fire took place in the early hours of that day on the 20th. Remained in that compartment for some time before that compartment actually decayed and submitted and allowed more oxygen to be introduced and have that fire grow out. Actual cause of the fire we determined to be incendiary.
What is incendiary?
Incendiary means there is flame introduction, ignitable fire in an area where there shouldn't be, or in a manner where there shouldn't actually take place. So it's basically purposely set.
Purposefully set fire. And the detective, you heard him talking about the time, that 3 a.m. timestamp on when this fire started. We've been showing in previous days when we've covered this trial, the surveillance footage that seems to appear a person lurking around the house around 3 a.m. and also around 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. that morning of Paul Caneiro, a car leaving his home. So a lot of evidence that they're putting together and trying to make sure this jury understands how it all fits together.
Correct. And they even went down the rabbit hole and said, could this have been started by a candle? Could this have been started by other methods? And he was very clear that this was intentionally set. And again, you look at the damage, it is irrefutable that this damage was extensive, that it was a long-lasting fire, that it was hot. I mean, you look, it's torched metal. It is melted, and it is just so painful to think about the victims in that house in terms of not only the asphyxiation, but as Josh said, in terms of the burns. And that is going to play very well with the jury, especially when you talk about the children.
Oh, yeah.
That is something that is a bridge too far for most people.
Powerful evidence for the prosecution. Josh, the origin of the fire, it shows that the prosecution isn't going to just jump over. Just because there were murders doesn't mean that this fire, they don't have to prove how it happened. They're making sure that they are proving every element of the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And they need to lock that down, because otherwise the defense can stand up and go, hey, listen, they got 70%, 80%, 90%. To get beyond a reasonable doubt, you need the more. And in fact, the jury instructions actually talk about how it's not 100% certainty, because defense lawyers have been really good at making that argument. By coming out with such a strong law enforcement expert who knows all those loose ends need to get wrapped up in the initial testimony, you stop the defense from even going down that pathway during cross-examination. Because guess what? There's stuff that they're not going to be able to say 100%. They're just human. It is an education that results in a judgment. But by closing those off, the state's case gets stronger and stronger. The defense has to really throw something pretty wild out there to upset a clear narrative.
And Jared, I'm going to need something wild from you, because I can't really get any opinions from my panel today that are pro-defense. So where do you think the defense goes, in your opinion, once this case turns over to them?
It just sounds like if they're telegraphing their case, they're going to blame the only surviving brother. To that, I say good luck. Everything points to Paul. And I think one thing, Julia, that's worth noting, that the call between Keith and Paul, where he's confronting him, asking him for the login, that was the night before the murders. The house of cards fell. Paul was identified as having been stealing from Keith, and the whole thing fell apart. Good luck pointing the finger at brother number 3, but that's really the only place they can go.
So some of what has come out in cross, Lisa, is that there were no threatening communications from Paul to Keith. There's nothing about planning an arson, nothing about planning a murder in his Google searches. I mean, they're saying, hey, he was actually the more passive brother. Keith was the one who was aggressive, and that's how things played out. Do you think that helps them in the long run?
I do not, because the evidence is so strong. And they started off this case going through it with, I believe it was an accountant, and just really kind of slow build, right? And a slow build. I was going to say a slow burn, but I don't like that pun. But they are really ramping up, and you don't really need this to figure out a Google search and all of this stuff. You have the fact that there was money that was embezzled. You have a recording that they were involved in an argument. You had Keith saying to, I believe it was Corey, that he was going to cut Paul off, and there was absolutely a financial dispute between the brothers, and so that is enough. And so this wasn't, as we were talking about before, this really didn't seem to be too well planned in terms of how this was going to be pulled off, right? He had a little fire in his house. Okay, I'm going to set a little fire here, and then I'm going to go down the street and then torch my brother's house.
I actually want to show you some more evidence. This is the last one we want to fit in, Josh. Don't want to cut you off. But this one is very compelling as well. These are the bloodstains found inside Keith Caneiro's home. So despite all of the burn and char inside of that home, detectives testified that these are consistent with transfer stains and appear to be handprint or finger marks. And stains were also found in the kitchen where one victim was discovered. That would be the wife of Keith Caneiro here. So as we look at those images, Josh, you can go ahead and make your point, and we're adding in this as evidence that jurors are taking in.
And that actually adds to my point, which is when you're defending a case like this, where there really does appear to be a straightforward, strong state case, sometimes you've got to take the bad evidence and actually lean into it and make that bad evidence the reason that beyond a reasonable doubt cannot be reached, because of things like, once they identified the brothers, the suspect was immediately before them. They never considered other people. When they looked at this attack, this is outside the character of this brother, who didn't have a bunch of prior Google searches. How do I harm my family or do this, that? You've got this empty chair, the third party. That that existence within the case can be enough to convince jurors that it hasn't been proven sufficiently. How the state comes back and addresses that and how the defense raises that, that's the story of the next part of the trial.
The state's case continues there in New Jersey. We are going to leave it there for now, but when we come back, everyone is coming with us and we are going to go beyond the gavel. A former NFL star facing attempted murder charges and has a stand your ground defense that could decide his fate. That's next.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Welcome back. We are taking you beyond the gavel. Those cases that haven't played out in front of a jury with a trial yet, but the investigation and everything leading up has our attention. In Florida, former NFL star Antonio Brown, he was back in court today. He appeared via Zoom. He's charged with attempted second-degree murder following a shooting incident that happened during a celebrity boxing match in Miami. So before we get into what happened today in court, let's get you caught up on this case. Here's Court TV anchor Michael Ayala.
It was just before midnight on May 16, 2025, when a fight erupted inside a celebrity boxing event in Miami and quickly spilled outside. Police say 2 shots were fired, but by the time they arrived, the alleged victim had left. Security guards identified the shooter as former NFL player Antonio Brown. Prosecutors charged Brown with attempted second-degree murder months later. Now, he is accused of allegedly shooting Zulkarnain Nantambu with a security guard's gun.
We've entered a not guilty plea, demanded trial by jury, requested all of the evidence pursuant to Rule 3.220.
Brown, an all-pro wide receiver, spent 12 years in the NFL, playing for teams including the Pittsburgh Steelers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. His attorney, Mark Eiglar, says his client was legally carrying a gun that night and that the shooting was in self-defense. Brown says he was attacked as he left the arena and that he didn't fire at Nantambu, he fired near him to scare him off.
This case is clearly overcharged as an attempted second-degree murder. Even the judge said, at worst, we're talking about aggravated assault.
Brown says Nantambu was waiting for him outside the event to attack him. Brown says it happened before. Brown's motion to dismiss the charges alleges Nantambu attacked him back in 2023. He also claims Nantambu was previously jailed for 30 days in Dubai for stealing jewelry from him. Brown, who was arrested in Dubai and extradited back to Miami, is free on $25,000 bond. He could face 15 years behind bars if convicted.
Now here's a look at what happened today in court. Antonio Brown's attorney is asking prosecutors for DNA results that he says will prove his client lawfully owned a gun he's accused of using in this case. Now the judge wants to move this case forward and schedule Brown's stand your ground hearing, but there are some depositions that need to take place, so the defense says they can't get any of that done until all of that is finalized. And a key detail also surfaced today that there is a holster that's in evidence belonging to Brown that was left at the scene. So this goes to the defense's claim that he did fire his own legally owned weapon, not one taken from a security guard trying to break up the fight. So that next status hearing is set for February 25th. Of course, Antonio Brown is out on bond. Let's bring in our power panel and get their opinion on this case. We've got Lisa Bonner, Josh Schiffer, and Jared Ferrantino. Jared, I'm going to start out there with you. This is one of those cases where we keep getting new bits of video, different angles. There's so many people in it. Before we get into the details, I really want to know your overall opinion of this case.
Well, Mark Eiglarsh is a very good lawyer, and he's very confident that he's going to be able to properly claim Antonio Brown was standing his ground. And in Florida, once a defense attorney says that, there's no duty to retreat. It's on the state to show he was not reasonable in being fearful and shooting the victim in this case. That's the bottom line. That's where we're headed. So he's not saying I didn't do it, which is pretty obvious. He's saying I was justified. The issue of whether or not it's his gun is pretty paramount, because in addition to a stand your ground law the elements of the law, you have to lawfully possess that gun. You cannot necessarily use someone else's gun in that situation. That's why that seems to be a hang-up for everyone, and they're waiting for DNA results, which will have Brown's, they're hoping have Brown's DNA on it, and it's his holster which held that gun. That's what they're going to argue.
Lisa, your opinion of this case and the no duty to retreat, even in that crowd?
Yeah, well, you know, when you have a crowd, it's a little bit difficult to retreat. I mean, apparently, one of the narratives is that the Nantambu stalked him and started this fight. And so it is very difficult at this point with dueling narratives to really see. So we're going to have to wait and see what the evidence how the evidence plays out. The DNA evidence plays out as well. We're going to have, when they start to talk about the case, that's going to be great for the defense because the prosecution is going to have to lay out all of the elements, which gives the defense an opportunity to come back and really frame the narrative. However, there is no duty to retreat, as we just previously talked about, and I want to bring up another case in Florida with George Zimmerman, right? And the fact that this person stalked a child and basically got away with murdering a child on the stand your ground. So I do think that if he's an excellent lawyer, he's correct in saying that, and I think the evidence is going to be, it's going to play on the evidence as it comes forward. However, I do think that he has a pretty good chance in this case, because if the evidence shows that it's his gun, that he did not snatch the security guard's gun, then I think it's going to play out better for him because, you know, obviously, as we talked about, there's no duty to retreat, and he was standing his ground.
When anytime you think about stand your ground in Florida, it's top of mind to think about Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman's acquittal. Josh, your opinion on this case and the charges, because attempted murder is high. It's not aggravated assault with a weapon.
Yeah, no, this is not a slap and tickle. This is a real charge. You're looking at real time. The prior difficulties between the parties, that's going to tell a whole wonderful story. If there really has been allegations of jewelry stealing, stalking prior to, man, that can change the emotional tone, tenure, and approach of a case no matter what. The state has what appears to be a really strong case, so the defense has done some brilliant work in claiming the stand your ground, knowing that it then burden shifts back to the state. You're giving the state some new obligations, and at the same time, you're creating the mud. What does a jury want? Beyond a reasonable doubt, clear, I can make this decision. Every time you insert a new question, was it his gun or was it somebody else's gun? Well, it really looks like his gun, but it could be.
Why is that a question? Let me ask Jared Ferrantino that. Why are we so confused about this gun? The prosecution says it was a security guard's gun that had been taken. The defense says we just want the DNA so we can prove that it was his lawful gun. Shouldn't we be able to look at something on the gun or talk to the security guard to see if this was in fact that gun? How is DNA going to help?
That's an issue I hope they clear up at that hearing. But when they say security guard, are they meaning a security guard on site working for a third party, or is it somebody that works for Antonio Brown? See, those are the questions that have not become clarified yet. But the bottom line is, Larsh is claiming it's Antonio Brown's gun and he was lawfully possessing it. If the state can show that it was the security guard's gun at that hearing, that stand your ground defense at this stage may fall.
Should there be a receipt, Josh? I mean, I just feel like there should be more. And DNA, obviously, if even if he grabbed it from a security guard, his DNA is going to be all over it.
How does constructive possession work? Is it mine? Is it yours? Is it co-owned at the same time? What if I bought it and you're carrying it? What if you work for me? There are so many issues. And remember, the truth, it's kind of the quest for the truth involves asking lots of questions. If the jury's really on a quest for the truth, they're going to ask questions that it's very hard for the state to give absolute certain answers to. That's how you win the case for the defendant. The state can have a great presentation, but if it's not enough, you walk free.
We have got to get to our break. Maybe if they look inside the gun and there's DNA, then that's going to prove the case. We will continue to follow it. Coming up, we're going to get our hot takes from our panel on the cold facts. We'll get their opinions on today's biggest headlines, including the grandparents of an alleged parent killer teen. They signed a deal that may appear to profit off of the crime. We want to talk about that. And the wife of an accused child sex abuser is speaking out. Stay with us.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
Welcome back. We have a lot of headlines to get to today. Hot takes on the cold hard facts. Let's get to our first story. This one out of Georgia. A judge denied bond again for a 17-year-old who was charged in the murder of her mother and stepfather. Sarah Grace Patrick has been held without bond since August of 2025. And recently her trial was set for August of 2026. Now, despite some strong family support around her and her community, the judge pointed to new concerns about releasing her on bond, saying there's this six-figure media deal involving family members as a reason to keep her in custody. Now, Patrick's maternal grandparents allegedly signed a contract for a documentary about Sarah's story. Patrick's defense assured the court that she won't benefit from the $100,000 payday, just her grandparents, but they may be part of that community supporting her if she is released on bond. Let's bring back in our guest panel. They each have 25 seconds on the clock to state their case. Lisa Bonner, Josh Schiffer, and Jarrett Ferrantino. Lisa, 25 seconds. What's your take on this?
The judge was absolutely right in not giving her a bond because there were no material changes in the circumstance. There were worse aggravating circumstances, if you will, with the fact that what were the grandparents thinking, right, in terms of profiting off of this at this time, knowing that your granddaughter is in jail and now you've got a piggy bank of $100,000 to basically assist in her.
Potentially. They say she's not going to get a penny, Josh.
Yes.
What's your take?
This is cruelty theater at the highest level. I think it's disgusting that the state of Georgia would go after a 17-year-old for the death penalty in any way, because at 17, your brain biscuit ain't done cooking. You are not going to be able to be held responsible for the most vicious crimes and put to death by the state, because also no one knows the full story here. I happen to know some people involved in this. There is so much more that's gonna come out in the defense with the mitigation, just getting started.
That's news to me about the death penalty on that one, Josh. I have to look that one up. Jarrett Ferrantino, your take.
I don't agree with the judge considering the grandparents taking the money against her. I think that's wrong. I think there are legitimate reasons to hold her. There was a witness intimidation concern from her cousins and some other people. But the fact that the judge looked at this and said, your grandparents took money, you're staying in jail because of that, is concerning to me.
All right, everyone's saying that this documentary is not a good look for the grandparents who actually support her in this. Let's move to our story number 2. This one out of California. Melissa Gilbert speaks out on social media amid her husband Timothy Busfield's child sex abuse charges. Now, we of course know Melissa Gilbert as a child star from Little House on the Prairie. It's what she's most recognizable for. And she got off of social media, but she is back now. This after her husband Timothy Busfield was released after being charged with 2 counts of criminal sexual contact of a minor charges. These are children under 13 in that count and 1 count of child abuse. She wrote this post shared on her official Modern Prairie Instagram page saying, quote, I'm sending you all my love and gratitude during this extraordinarily difficult time, not only for Tim, me, and our family, but in the collective heaviness of what so many of us seem to be carrying right now. She went on to later say that she's stepping back from the noise and the news and even our daily responsibilities. From time to time gives us space to recharge, reflect, and find our center again. Lisa, I'm going to start with you again. Entertainment lawyer. Again, it's about speaking out while we still have charges pending.
Listen, if Stand By Your Man were a person, that she is embodying that down to the ground. I do believe that this was a very calculated method of saying, of throwing her support behind her husband. But I believe where there's smoke, there's fire. I'm not necessarily saying in this instance that he has done this, but there have been repeated accusations against Timothy in the past. But she is standing 10 toes down. You like it, I love it.
Josh Schiffer, your take.
I think it was very appropriate and good and certainly calculated. It's good, but it's more important for what it doesn't say. It is not a full-throated defense and allegations of how wrong and made up and fake and all. which is what a lot of people would have expected.
Moving to Jared Parentino, I mean, if she's posting, even after going off of social media, it was notable that she pulled all of her accounts after her husband was charged. So now she's back. I mean, what are the odds she posted this without many lawyers and PR folks looking it over first?
And a crisis management team. I look at this isn't Little House on the Prairie and the chickens are going to come home to roost here. The bottom line is she is standing by her man, but if you look at the history that's coming out, there's a history of these issues. She clearly has stood by him through them, and then throws this political commentary, slight political commentary, and references the storm as a distraction. I don't like it. I wish she'd stay quiet.
All right, great opinions from everyone. We're going to move to our third story. Before we do that, we did some fact checking on the Sarah Grace Patrick story. She is charged as an adult, but not facing the death penalty in Georgia. Let's move to this one. Some of the world's biggest tech companies face a landmark trial, potentially in Los Angeles, starting this week over claims that their platforms, including Meta's Instagram and Google and YouTube, deliberately harm children and cause an addiction to social media. This is something a lot of parents see in their children and a lot of young people are worried about. Now, this is something, by the time this actually went forward, TikTok was initially named in this suit, but they agreed today to settle just before the trial kicked off. But the details of that settlement were not disclosed. Now, the plaintiffs, this is all stemming from a 19-year-old who says he was harmed in this case. The case argues that companies use addictive design tactics and similar to casinos and cigarette makers to boost profits, while these tech giants, they deny any wrongdoing. And we expect that there's a possibility that Mark Zuckerberg, the top CEO or top person over there at Meta, may take the stand. So we're wondering how this outcome could reshape how social media treats young users. Jared, I'm going to start with you. What's your take on this case and the impact it could have?
Well, there's a kink in the armor. There's an acknowledgement by resolving this case that children have been harmed, and they're acknowledging certain aspects of social media are addictive. Undoubtedly, memorandums and internal documents are going to come out to say, how could we keep young people engaged? And that's the kind of thing, provided they can tie that damage in kids, depression, bullying, and other things that have befallen them, back to the social media companies. These cases are going to be resolved, and for some big money.
Lisa Bonner, your take.
Yeah, I agree that this was a smart thing to do. Snapchat had already settled with the plaintiff, and this is a situation where adults are absolutely addicted to social media. There is something going around now called abstinence, APP, abstinence, and they have a lot of apps online where you can download to take your to make sure that your social media as an adult is monitored. So if we are having a problem,
got to get to Josh, Lisa. But as a father and a lawyer, is this going to have any impact, Josh?
Absolutely. The bellwether trial, everybody's watching it. The idea that the social media companies are now fracturing because, like you said, Snapchat settled, TikTok settled last week. It just got announced today. That means that some heads have turned around and said, hey, we may be on the hook here. Let's not get exposed. But the biggest dogs are still going to trial. That trial result informs the entire world how we're going to deal with social media and kids.
And mental health and everything connected to it. It is such an important thing that we will watch.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.